Let me tell you something, guys. The whole time I was watching this movie, I was going, wow, I understand every quote joke ever made. Hello and welcome to my review of the Quentin Tarantino masterpiece Pulp Fiction, starring John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Bruce Willis, and Tim Roth. Now, I know that most of you are thinking, wait, you're a movie critic and you haven't seen this movie? What's wrong with you? Because I got that like at least 4 times when I was telling people that I was watching Pulp Fiction for the first time. But I gotta say, I am so happy I did because this thing is fantastic and lived up to its word of mouth 100%, which is hard to do when you hear how great a movie is for pretty much all your life. How do I even try to define the story of boxers, hitmen, and royales with cheese in one simple summary? Essentially what this movie is one story with interconnected chapters that stand alone as their own individual stories that are all tales of crime, deception, horrible monstrosities, everything bad in this world. And Quentin Tarantino takes it, turns it on its head, and gives you a brand new look at it. Guys, I'm not even going to beat around the bush here. This is one of the most fascinating films I've ever seen. I love the style of this movie, the chapters. It kind of reminds me of reading just a great comic book. It's divided into these 3 completely standalone sections, and they're all just perfect and work not only as individual short films, but as this whole interconnected story. It's rarity to see a film with so many characters where the movie manages to make you get to know every single one of them and love them all. And the structure of this movie, it reminds me of what Tarantino did later on with Inglourious Basterds, which is the chapter structure, except here, instead of a few really good chapters, this movie is perfect throughout the entire thing. And why is that? Well, first of all, the dialogue. Sweet, buttery Jesus. I have never heard better dialogue. I swear, the dialogue in this thing is simply incredible. I love the way that it's almost written like gangster poetry in a way. Just every line just slithers and flows in just this fantastic way. There's not a wasted line of dialogue in this film, and the entire movie is quotable. Just when you think you've heard all the great lines in the movie that you've heard, like, say what again? Or, you know what I mean? There's just a ton of, like, famous lines in the movie. There's just a ton of little lines sprinkled throughout the movie where you're just like, boom! Oh yeah, I wish I'd written that. It's just, as someone who really wants to write movies as well as direct them, this movie is a hell of a thing to watch. Just by the way that Quentin Tarantino could just write a simple scene that takes place in a diner and make the conversation between the 2 characters the most interesting thing you've ever heard. But all the great dialogue in the world doesn't mean a whole lot if you don't have great actors, and this movie's got that in spades. Whether you're talking John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Bruce Willis, Ving Rhames, these guys, and the list goes on and on. These guys are just A-listers. The best thing about this movie is that all the characters just feel so unique. Like, each one is just their own entity. That's not only a unique specimen in this movie, but it just feels like you've never seen a character like this in a film. Each actor just adds their own little unique little subtleties that just make these characters pop out so much more than your average film. Every single character in this movie is interesting, and there are very few films you can say that about. Quentin Tarantino is just a master filmmaker. There's no getting around that. There's not a whole lot of action in this movie, so much as there is just sudden violence, but every time there's supposed to be tension, Tarantino delivers the tension in spades. There's a scene in this movie, for example, where Bruce Willis is about to go into his apartment and he thinks that there might be a gangster there. John Travolta, you find out. And he's just... there's a shot where he takes the key and you see it go towards the keyhole and he just holds it there for a second and the tension builds up in your spine as you're waiting for him to just get gunned down. It's just ridiculous the amount of tension Tarantino builds up in these small scenes without having to shoot a gargantuan amount of action. That's what I love about Tarantino, is that he's able to evoke tension out of the most everyday things, and that is a hard task to fulfill. In terms of problems with the movie, I got nothing. I mean, I was just sitting here with a blank expression on my face for 5 minutes, staring at 3 cough drops, trying to think of something I didn't like. There was nothing. Overall, Pulp Fiction is as close to a perfect movie as you can get. It's brilliantly assembled, fantastically acted, and just so wonderfully unique. There's no movie like this in the world, and you have to see it for yourself. Pulp Fiction easily gets 4 stars out of 4. And that was my review of Pulp Fiction. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to my channel. And until next time, I'm Movie Kid Mike, making sure your time is worth your money.